The first sound that told everyone things were about to go wrong wasn't the jukebox or the clatter of dishes in the kitchen. It was engines. Not one, not two, a whole pack. The low, angry rumble of Harley-Davidsons rolled across the parking lot of Lone Star Diner, a faded little spot on a forgotten Texas highway where the coffee was cheap, the pie was decent, and the only thing thinner than the walls was people's patience after midnight. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. A 20-year-old country song wheezed out of the old jukebox. Two truckers in stained ball caps sat in the far booth, staring at their plates like they were trying to remember what vegetables looked like. Behind the counter, wiping a ketchup stain for the third time, stood Sarah Blake. To most people, she was just the quiet waitress, small, soft-spoken, the kind of woman whose name you only remembered because it was printed on the little plastic tag pinned to her chest. But if you looked closer, really looked to'd, you'd see things the average diner customer never noticed. The way she kept her back to the wall whenever possible. How her eyes flicked automatically to the door every time it opened. The subtle, careful way she moved like she knew exactly where every table, leg, and chair was without needing to look. It wasn't nerves. It was training. Training she never talked about. Training she had paid for in pain and blood and memories that ripped her awake at 3 a.m. without mercy. But tonight the past wasn't going to stay buried. Tonight the past was about to walk right in, wearing leather vests and patches. The door swung open with the lazy violence of men who were used to taking up space. The iron jackals rolled in like they were stepping onto a stage. Leather cuts with a coiled snake and skull patch. Chains clinking against denim. Boots that left dust and oil on the old black and white tiles. There were maybe a dozen of them. Maybe more. It was hard to keep count when they moved as one loud, laughing mass. At the front was Grim. Nobody knew his real name, and nobody asked. He was big in the way people on wanted posters tended to be broad, mean, and carved with old scars that told stories nobody wanted to hear twice. He paused at the entrance, scanning the diner like a wolf sniffing the air. His gaze slid over the truckers, the cook in the pass-through window, the old man nursing a coffee by the window, and then settled on Sarah. She felt it. That weight. That assessment. She lowered her eyes and continued refilling the sugar caddy. But Grim had already decided. "She do," he muttered to the man beside him. The guy on his right brick, a walking wall with tattoos up his neck, followed Grim's line of sight and smirked. "Yeah," Brick said. "She'll definitely do." The iron jackals took over the middle section of the diner, shoving chairs aside, rearranging tables like it was their living room, and everyone else was just background noise. The air felt tighter now, heavier. In the far booth, one of the truckers set down his fork slowly. Near the window, the old man in the denim jacket turtle shifted slightly, turning his chair so he could see the bikers without craning his neck. And behind the counter, Sarah took a slow breath. "You've handled worse," she reminded herself. "You can handle this." But even as she thought it, she knew something was different tonight. "Evenin', folks," Sarah said quietly, taking a pad from her apron as she approached the big table. Her voice was gentle, but it carried. She'd learned how to do that. Projection without aggression. It had worked on drill instructors. It would not, she suspected, work on Grim. He looked her up and down, a lazy sort of inspection. "Look at this," he drawled to his crew. "We stop in some hole-in-a-wall diner in the middle of nowhere, and they still manage to find us the cutest little waitress in the county." A few of the bikers laughed. Sarah kept her pen steady. "What can I get you?" she asked. Grim snorted. "We'll start with coffee. Black. For all of us." "That's 12 coffees," she said. "Any food to go with that?" "Oh, we'll get to that," Brick said, his eyes glued to her name tag. "Right, Sarah?" It always bothered her a little, the way strangers said her name when they read it off that little piece of plastic, like they'd been introduced, like they had a right to it. "Coffee first," Sarah repeated, writing quickly. "I'll be right back." As she turned, Grim's voice cut through the low chatter. "Hey, don't forget to smile." She paused, just a fraction of a second. He'd said it the way men say it when they don't care if you're happy, only whether you look like you are. Sarah turned back, offering the smallest of polite smiles. It wasn't enough for Grim. "Come on," he said louder. "That all you got? We just made your night, sweetheart. You're gonna get tipped better from one table than you do all week. Least you can do is look grateful." "I am grateful," Sarah said calmly. "Thank you." It wasn't the right answer. He wanted her to perform, to blush and giggle and pretend he was charming instead of dangerous. His eyes cooled a degree. "Yeah," he said slowly. "We'll work on that. Before we get deeper into this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone talk down to you because they thought they knew who you were, only to discover they had no idea what you'd survived? Ever been in a job, a classroom, a relationship, where people treated you like you were weak, soft, or harmless? But if they knew what you'd been through, they would have shown you a lot more respect. If you have, share your story in the comments. Not just for me, but for the thousands of other people who are going to read them and realize they're not as alone as they feel. And if you believe the world needs more stories about quiet, everyday heroes, the kind of people no one notices until everything goes wrong, consider hitting the thanks button or liking this video. Your support is what lets us keep shining light on the people who never ask for it but absolutely deserve it. All right, back to Sarah, because tonight, nobody in that diner knew who she was. They only thought they did. As Sarah poured coffee into 12 chipped mugs, the conversation at the big table got louder. Stories of fights. What they'd done at a bar in Albuquerque. Whose bike hit 130 on a straightaway. Who they made cry last week at some other truck stop. Sarah tuned it out. She'd learned to move through noise like a ghost. She set down the last mug when a voice spoke from the far booth. Miss Earl called gently. "Could I get a refill over here when you have a second?" "Sure thing, Earl," she answered automatically, grateful for the excuse to step away. The bikers barely noticed she'd left. They were too busy talking over each other. As Sarah refilled Earl's cup, he leaned slightly closer and lowered his voice. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked. She blinked. "I'm fine. They're just loud." "Loud is one thing," Earl murmured. "Mean is another. That one with the beard, he's looking for something tonight. And it ain't on the menu." "I'll be fine," she said again, trying to convince herself as much as him. Earl's eyes dropped briefly, almost unconsciously, to her wrists. She kept her sleeves long, even in the summer heat. It was easier that way. Earl frowned just a bit. "I ever tell you I did 2 tours in Iraq?" he said casually. She stiffened. "Yeah," he continued. "Back when my knees still worked. Seen all kinds of folks come through a place like this since I got home. I know what scared looks like, and I know what trained looks like." He tilted his head, studying her. "You don't look scared." She forced a small smile. "Maybe I'm too tired to be," Earl chuckled. "Yeah, I know that feeling." Their brief moment was shattered by a whistle from the middle of the diner. "Hey, Sarah," Brick called loudly. "We're out of sugar over here. You holding out on us?" She set the coffee pot down. "Duty calls," she said. Earl watched her go, a complicated expression on his weathered face. Something about the way she walked, the rhythm, the balance. That's not just some scared girl, he thought. That's someone who's done this under fire. When she got back to the biker's table, Brick held up the sugar caddy like it was a smoking gun. "See that?" he told Grim. "Empty. Completely empty." "You trying to starve us, sweetheart?" "Sorry about that," Sarah said. "We had a rush earlier. I'll grab more packs from the counter." She reached for the caddy. Brick didn't let go. "Not yet," he said. "We're having a conversation." "I didn't hear a question," she replied quietly. The men around the table hooted. "You," one of them said. "She's got a little spice under all that quiet." Grim leaned back, studying her. "What happened to your arm?" he suddenly asked. Sarah froze. Her sleeves weren't rolled up, but they weren't perfect either. The shift and stretch of work had pulled one up just enough to reveal the faint edge of something dark. "Ink? Scar?" "Both." She pulled the fabric down instantly. "It's nothing," she said. "Old injury." Rick smirked. Must have been a bad one to make you jump like that. Grim rested his elbow on the table, resting his chin on his fist. Tell you what, he said. You tell us the story behind that, and we'll tip you better than you've ever been tipped in your life. Sarah shook her head. There's no story, she lied. Refills, anyone? She began pouring coffee again, ignoring the way Grim's eyes followed every movement. It happened slowly. At first, it was just comments. Hey, Sarah, you got a boyfriend? Bet he's a real tough guy. Bet she lives with her cat. I bet she cries if you look at her too hard. And it was little things. A foot stuck out just enough to make her stumble. A napkin accidentally dropped for her to pick up. A hand raised like it might touch her, and then didn't, just to watch her flinch. The truckers watched, uncomfortable. The cook watched from the kitchen window, jaw tight. Earl watched most of all, his hand wrapped around his coffee mug so hard his knuckles went white. At one point, the cook mic cleaned out. Everything all right out there? He called. Grim turned slowly, giving the cook a hard stare. Peachy, he said. Isn't it, sweetheart? Sarah nodded quickly. Yeah, Mike, it's fine. Mike looked torn. He had a phone. He could call the sheriff. But he knew the math. By the time anyone got out here, whatever was going to happen would have already happened. Just yell if you need anything, he said softly. She nodded, wishing he wouldn't look at her like that. Like she was one step from breaking. If only he knew. She'd broken a long time ago. This was nothing, or so she told herself. Before we go further, there's something about people like Sarah the world doesn't talk about much. We talk about heroes in uniform, medals, parades, flags, but we don't always talk about what happens after. How some of the bravest, most capable people this country has ever produced end up doing quiet jobs in forgotten places. Working in diners, driving trucks, stacking shelves in grocery stores, not because they're too weak to do anything else, but because noise feels dangerous now. Crowds feel like battlefields. The simplest life feels like the only one where they might maybe get some peace. If you've ever wondered where the heroes went after the wars left the news, they're closer than you think. They might be making your coffee, or, in Sarah's case, trying to make it through one more shift without letting the war out. It was nearly 11 p.m. when Grim decided he was bored. And a bored man with power is the most dangerous kind. He slammed his coffee mug down so hard a crack shot through the ceramic. All right, he announced. Fun's over. We're done playing around. I want some real entertainment. His crew quieted the way men do when they know their leader is about to set the tone for the rest of the night. He crooked a finger at Sarah. Come here, he said. Right here. In front of me. Every instinct in her screamed to turn and walk away. But another voice spoke louder. The one that said, if you say no, this gets worse. If you stand him up, someone else gets hurt too. Just get through it. Like always. She stepped forward until she stood at the edge of the table. What do you need? She asked, her voice polite, almost blank. Grim's gaze lingered on her face, then slid to her arms. Roll up your sleeves, he said. Her heart stopped. I can't, she replied softly. It's against dress code. Health code, you know. The manager Grim stood up. The room got smaller. Do I look like I give a damn about health code? He asked. His voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. No, Sarah said quietly. Then roll them up. Earl half stood from his booth. Hey now, he said. She doesn't need to. Brick turned, pulling back his vest just enough to show the grip of something black and ugly tucked into his waistband. Sit down, Grandpa, he said. The grown-ups are talking. Earl sat slowly, his eyes never leaving Sarah. She felt the room pressing in. The truckers. The cook. Earl. All of them, staring. All of them powerless. Not your first standoff, she reminded herself. Just a different terrain. She took a breath. If she refused, this could turn into something far worse. If she complied, the secret she'd been hiding so carefully would be out. Either way, the night had already gone too far to walk back. With fingers that didn't shake, she grabbed the edge of her right sleeve. and rolled it up. Inch by inch, a swirl of scar tissue crept into view, first faint, pale, burned smooth in places. It crawled from the back of her hand up toward her elbow, a map of past fire. Some of the bikers winced. "Damn," one muttered. "What happened to you?" More fabric rolled. Beneath the scars, ink emerged. Bold lines. Strong shape. Not some random barbed wire or a butterfly or a flower. No. This was an eagle. An eagle perched on a crossed rifle and scope. Beneath it, a banner read, USMC Scout Sniper. And below that, a string of numbers and letters marking a battalion only a few would truly understand. Another tattoo curled just beneath it, nearly swallowed by scar tissue. One shot, one life. The silence that fell over the diner wasn't just quiet. It was a reckoning. Grim stared. His voice, when it came, was flatter than anyone had heard it all night. "What is that?" he asked. Sarah held his gaze for the first time since he'd walked in. "A mistake," she said softly, "depending on who you ask." Earl pushed himself to his feet, his chair scraping loudly. "Holy hell," he breathed. "Sniper? Marine sniper." One of the younger bikers scoffed. "Nah," he said. "They don't let women do that." Earl turned slowly. "You ever been downrange, son?" he asked. "You ever watched dust jump off a wall 5 inches from your head because somebody 1,000 yards away doesn't like you?" The younger man swallowed. "That tattoo doesn't lie," Earl continued, pointing at Sarah's arm. "I don't care what you think you know about policies and regulations. Out there, the brass will send whoever can get the job done, and that he, nodding toward the ink, is the mark of someone who got it done." Grim looked from the old man to the waitress and back. A long time ago, before he'd traded uniforms for leather, he'd seen photos of men with similar ink. Quiet guys. Eyes that didn't miss anything. The ones nobody jokingly snuck up on in the barracks because you might end up on the floor choking if you moved too fast. "Bull," Brick muttered. "She's what, 5'4"? 120 pounds? She ain't no sniper." Sarah's lips twitched. "Wind doesn't care how tall you are," she said. "Gravity doesn't ask how much you weigh," Brick started to reply, but Grim held up a hand, silencing him. "Ask her," Earl said quietly. "Ask her where?" Grim swallowed. "Where?" he asked. "Where were you?" Sarah exhaled slowly, like she was bleeding air out of an old wound. "Marja Sangan. A few other places no one puts on recruitment posters," she said. "Long days. Longer nights. Afghanistan," Earl murmured. "I figured." The diner melted away for a moment. In its place, a different scene rose in Sarah's mind like smoke. The smell of dust and cordite. Shouts in a language she'd never fully learned. The crack of rifles and the humph of something heavier. She was on a roof. Flat, hot concrete beneath her. Her spotter to her left, murmuring wind calls. Her cheek pressed against the stock, breath shallow, heartbeat loud in the world of her scope. A Marine squad pinned down in an alley. 2 insurgents on a balcony with an RPG. 1 more behind a half wall. She remembered the exact distance. The wind speed. The way heat shimmer distorted the view. She remembered squeezing the trigger. Once. Twice. 3 times. 3 bodies dropped. 7 Marines kept moving. The radio crackled gratitude and relief. She'd grunted acknowledgement and moved on. There'd be more. There were always more. 9 confirmed, Earl said quietly, dragging her back to the present. She blinked. "What?" "Your ink," he said, nodding at the small numerals near her wrist. 9 little marks. Some snipers do that. Count of men he stopped himself, glancing at the others, neutralized. Sarah pulled her sleeve halfway down, suddenly self-conscious. "They don't all do that," she said. "Most don't. But you did," Grim said. She met his gaze. "Yes," she said. "I did." Grim seemed to struggle with something inside himself. Pride, shame, anger, confusion, all twisting together. "So," he said finally, "you were a Marine, you did. All that." He gestured vaguely toward her arm. "Why the hell are you waiting tables out here in the middle of nowhere?" It wasn't mockery this time. It was genuine confusion. Sarah glanced around at the cracked linoleum, the cheap laminated menus, the flickering open sign buzzing in the window. "Because this place is quiet," she said. "Most nights, the only thing I have to shoot is a dirty look at someone who doesn't tip." A few people laughed weakly. She didn't. "You get used to the noise," she continued. "The chaos. The sense that something could go wrong any second, and then one day they tell you it's over. That you can go home. Only home doesn't feel like home anymore. It feels like a foreign country where everyone speaks a language that sounds like yours, but doesn't quite match in your head." Her eyes went distant. "You try a few things. A job at a sporting goods store. A security gig at a warehouse. But fluorescent lights and crowded parking lots start to feel a little too much like something else. So you find a smaller place, quieter, somewhere. You can see all the exits, and the only explosions are when the cook burns the fries." Mike from the kitchen raised a hand. "Hey," he protested. "Once. That happened once." A tiny smile touched her lips. Earl chuckled. Even Grimm's mouth twitched. "So yeah," Sarah finished. "I make coffee. I wipe counters. I refill sugar. And most nights, nobody touches me without asking." Her eyes hardened, just a little. "Tonight is a little different. Oh, the room might have found a new equilibrium right there. Might have." But Grimm's pride wasn't satisfied. Not yet. He looked around at his crew and saw something he didn't like. Hesitation. Respect. Maybe even a little fear. He couldn't afford that. Not as their leader. Not in front of civilians. He straightened, jaw tightening. "So what?" he demanded. "She did some time in uniform and got fancy ink. Doesn't change what's happening right now." Stepped in close again, invading her space. Sarah didn't back up this time. "You think I'm scared of you?" he asked quietly. "No," she said. "I think you're scared of something else. And you're taking it out on the easiest target in the room. Which, I'll admit, looked like me 10 minutes ago." A murmur ran through the diner. He grabbed her forearm again. "Don't get smart with me," he growled. And that was the wrong move. He didn't just grab her. His fingers pressed into scar tissue, thick, raised, sensitive in ways he couldn't possibly understand. Pain shot up her arm like fire. For a heartbeat, she wasn't in a diner anymore. She was back in a Humvee that had just rocked sideways from an explosion. Her arms seared from shrapnel and flame. The smell of burnt fabric and flesh and plastic. The roar of a second blast somewhere too close. The muggy Texas air vanished, replaced by choking smoke and dust. "Sarah," someone said. She blinked and saw his face inches from hers. Grim, not some insurgent. Not some phantom from memory. Grim, his hand on her arm. Her fingers moved before conscious thought caught up. She twisted her wrist in a move drilled into her nerves ages ago. His thumb rolled over the edge of her wrist bone, his grip collapsing. She pivoted her hips, used his momentum, and in a blink, Grim was on his knees. His arm was locked, joints stacked in a way that said, "One more bit of pressure, and something is going to break." The bikers surged halfway to their feet. Chairs skidded. Coffee sloshed. "Sit down." Sarah's voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. Something in it, something that didn't belong to waitresses. Something that belonged to fire teams and radio channels and people used to being a bad slammed into the room like a shockwave. Every vet in that diner felt it in their bones. Earl straightened unconsciously. One of the trucker's hands twitched toward a salute. He barely stopped. Grim's eyes were wide. "You're gonna break my arm," he rasped. "I could," she agreed. "I don't want to." "Let him go," Brick growled. "Right now." He took a step closer. The metallic slide of something from Earl's direction cut through the tension like a blade. "I wouldn't," Earl said conversationally, the small pistol in his hand, pointing at the floor, but very real. Brick froze. "We're all having a bad night," Earl continued. "Let's not make it worse." Grim swallowed hard. Who are you?" he asked Sarah. She hesitated. Her therapist would have told her this was a bad choice, that she should keep the identities separate, that once you let one out, it was hard to stuff it back into the box. but her therapist wasn't here. Her war was Staff Sergeant Sarah Blake, she said evenly. United States Marine Corps. 2nd Battalion. 4th Marines. Scout Sniper. Honorable discharge. It all came back in the saying. The dust, the noise, the weight of responsibility. The faces. She eased off his arm and stepped back. Grim stayed on his knees for a moment longer than he needed to. Not because he couldn't stand, because he didn't quite trust his legs. Finally, he pushed himself up, cradling his wrist. The room waited. His crew watched him closely. Leaders are made in moments like that. So are cowards. Grim exhaled. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Then louder, you pulled a rifle on sand people halfway around the world. You didn't have to pull a move on me. You put your hands on me, she replied. Don't do that again. Brick moved around the table, eyes still hard. We don't take orders from waitresses, he snarled. I don't care what ink they got. Boss, say the word and we'll what? Earl cut in sharply. What exactly are you going to do, son? Rough up a combat vet? You think that plays well on the evening news? Biker gang attacks decorated Marine sniper in small town diner. Real good PR for the club. A murmur of discomfort drifted through the Iron Jackals. One of the younger bikers, he couldn't have been more than 23, threw his lip. Wait, he said quietly, looking at Sarah. Were you in Helmand around 2011? Her gaze flicked to him. Yeah, she said slowly. Off and on? His throat bobbed. My brother was there, he said. Marine name was Tyler Hayes. He said, once they got pinned down outside some compound. They thought it was over. Then, boom. One shot, then another, then another. After that, everything went quiet except their own rifles. He swallowed again. He used to say, somewhere out there's an angel with a bolt action who saved my life. Sarah's face tightened. She'd heard variations of that story before. Never Tyler's name. But there'd been so many squads. So many nights. She met his eyes. You have any pictures? She asked softly. He fumbled his phone out, hands suddenly clumsy, swiping through photos. Finally, he held one up a group of Marines, sunburned and young and grinning like idiots, arms slung around each other. Third from the left, a lanky kid with tired eyes and a smirk. Sarah blinked hard. Yeah, she murmured. I remember them. You do? The young biker asked, voice trembling. She nodded. They thought it was over too. They were wrong. He sank into his chair, stunned. You saved my brother, he whispered. She shrugged one shoulder. Maybe I did. Maybe it was one of my teammates. We didn't always sign our work. Grim looked around. At his crew? At the truckers? At Earl, who'd quietly lowered his pistol, but kept it on the table. At Sarah, arms still bare, tattoo defiantly visible. A leader's choices echo. Sometimes louder than engines. He reached slowly into his pocket, pulled out a roll of bills thick enough to choke a horse. He peeled off several $100 notes and laid them gently on the counter in front of her. Then he jerked his chin at his men. Wallets, he said. They stared. Now, there was no mistaking that tone. Leather creaked. Chain wallets snapped open. Cash appeared. One by one, they stacked it on the counter until it was a small mountain of 20s, 50s, a couple of hundreds. It was obscene against the cheap green laminate. What are you doing? Sarah asked. Paying our tab, Grim said. With interest? I don't want your money, she said. It's not charity, Earl interjected. It's restitution, Grim nodded once. For tonight, he said. And for. He gestured vaguely at her scars, her tattoo, the invisible weight around her shoulders. For all the nights we weren't there, and you were? One of the bikers, the young one with the Marine brother, stepped forward. I can't undo how we acted, he said. But thank you. For Tyler, she looked down at the pile of cash. It made her stomach twist. Survivor's guilt had a way of turning even gratitude into a blade. I just want to finish my shift, she said quietly. Without anybody grabbing me again, Grim nodded. You got it, he said, From us. You'll never have to worry again. Iron jackals ride this stretch every few weeks. Anybody gives you trouble. He let the implication hang. Truckers, strangers, drunk tourists. All of them suddenly had a new reason to be polite. She shook her head, half in disbelief, half in reluctant amusement. That's not exactly the kind of security I was hoping for when I took this job, she said. World doesn't always give you the kind you hope for, Earl murmured. The iron jackals shuffled out with far less noise than they'd come in. No stomping. No crude jokes. A few nodded at Earl on their way. One tipped 2 fingers at Sarah in a gesture that was half salute, half apology. The door shut behind them with a soft click. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Mike poked his head out of the kitchen. Are they gone? He asked. Yeah, Sarah said. He stepped out fully, wiping his hands on a towel that had clearly seen better days. Then I'm closing this place early, he declared. On account of my heart not needing any more excitement tonight. Everyone's meals are on the house except the idiots who just tipped my waitress like she won the lottery. The truckers chuckled. One of them stood, walking toward the counter. He hesitated, then stuck his hand out. Ma'am, he said, I hauled fuel and convoys out of Bagram. We heard stories about snipers who... Let's just say I'm thankful there were people like you watching the rooftops. Thank you. She took his hand. It still felt strange, that phrase. Thank you. She never knew what to say. You're welcome, she managed. He nodded and shuffled away. Earl levered himself up with a soft groan from protesting knees and approached the counter. You okay? He asked. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to say she was fine, that it was no big deal, that she'd had worse. Instead, she heard herself say, I'm tired. Her voice broke on the last word. She stared at the pile of cash on the counter, and suddenly it wasn't money anymore. It was sand, blood, shell casings. Dog tags. Her vision blurred. Okay, Earl said gently. Okay? Hey, Mike, get her a glass of water. She swiped at her eyes with the heel of her hand, embarrassed. Sorry, she muttered. You don't usually have to armbar a biker leader in the middle of your shift, Mike said. I'd say you earned a breakdown. He slid her a glass. Her hands were shaking too hard to pick it up. Earl reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and round and metal. A challenge coin. He set it on the counter. She recognized the emblem instantly. Marine Corps. Then, below, Recon. Your force recon? She asked, surprised. Used to be, he said. Long time ago. Before your war? Desert Storm, and a couple of other little adventures no one talks about anymore. She picked up the coin, turning it between her fingers. He nodded at her ink. You kids did the hard fighting, he said. In cities and valleys I can't even pronounce. I'm just an old man trying to drink his coffee in peace. She snorted softly. You carry this around just to impress waitresses? She asked. Nah, he answered. I carry it around in case I ever run into someone who needs reminding they're not alone. He closed her fingers around it. You're not the only ghost in this diner, kiddo, he said quietly. You're just the only one who got caught tonight. Mike locked the front door 20 minutes later, flipping the sign to closed even though the clock said he had another hour. Beau'll have my hide tomorrow, he muttered. But he wasn't here, and I was. He can live with it. The truckers shuffled out through the back door after promising not to tell anyone the diner had closed early. Earl left last. At the threshold, he paused. You got somewhere safe to go? He asked Sarah. She nodded. Yeah. Little apartment 10 minutes down the road. Second floor. One way in, one way out. Windows face the street. You'd approve? I already do, he said. Just from hearing that, he hesitated, then scribbled a number on a napkin and slid it across the counter. That's my cell, he said. You ever feel the walls closing in? Or you wake up and it feels like you're back there. Or you just want to sit and drink bad coffee with someone who won't ask too many questions. Kalshi looked at the napkin. You don't even know me, she said. I know enough, he replied. I know that on some foreign rooftop, There was someone watching over kids like mine. Maybe that was you. Maybe it was someone like you. Either way, I owe. He tipped an invisible hat. Get some rest, Staff Sergeant, he said. That's an order. From one Marine to another? Retired, she corrected. He smiled sadly. Sure, he said. If that helps you sleep. Her apartment was exactly what she'd described. Small, simple, clean. A mattress on a frame. A small table. A couch that had seen better decades. On one wall was the only decoration that mattered. A framed photograph. 12 Marines in desert camo arms slung over each other, sand in their teeth and stupid grins on their faces. Sarah stood in the center of the photo, no smile. Just a half smirk that said, "This is dumb, but they insisted." She dropped her keys in a bowl by the door and leaned for a moment, palms pressed against the cool drywall. The night replayed in her head in jagged fragments. Grim's hand on her arm. The flash of panic. The armbar. The look in the young biker's eyes when he said, "You saved my brother." Her hand tightened on the challenge coin still in her pocket. She crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. On the nightstand was a small wooden box. She opened it. Inside lay things she'd sworn not to look at too often. Dog tags. A ribbon bar. A worn patch with a battalion insignia. A folded letter from a mother whose son hadn't made it home, thanking her anyway. And at the bottom, a photo. This one wasn't framed. 4 Marines in full gear, kneeling on a rooftop, rifles across their knees. On the back, in black marker, someone had scrawled, "To Blake our eyes in the sky. Don't ever disappear on us. Kincaid, Lopez, Deke, Mills." "Too late," she whispered. She traced their faces, then set the photo aside and picked up the challenge coin again. "Not the only ghost in the diner, huh?" she murmured. She thought of Earl's steady gaze, of the trucker who almost saluted, of Grim on his knees, fear and shame wrestling on his face, of the young biker, eyes wet, saying, "You saved my brother." Something eased in her chest. The war wasn't over. Not in here, not in any of them. But maybe it didn't have to stay a secret battle forever. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She frowned and opened it. Unknown. "This is Grim. Got your number from Mike. Hope that's okay." Unknown. "Just wanted you to know we talked after we left. Boys understand now." Words gone out. Unknown. "Anyone messes with Lone Star Diner, they answer to us." Unknown. Also. "My cousin served with 2 quarters. He didn't talk much. But when he did, he mentioned a lady sniper who never missed. If that was you, I owe you more than a tip." Sarah stared at the screen. For a long time, she didn't respond. Then finally, she typed, "Sarah, I don't need protection. I just need people to think before they put their hands on someone they don't know. Sarah, but thanks." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Then, Grim, I'll work on that part. Night. Staff Sergeant. She set the phone down, staring at the ceiling. Outside, some distant bike engines echoed faintly in the night. Not threatening. Just there. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was the only one awake. Carrying a weight nobody saw. If you're still watching this, maybe you saw yourself in Sarah, or in Earl, or even in Grim, realizing too late what kind of person he'd been pushing around. Maybe you've worked with someone who seemed quiet, fragile, even weak, only to find out later they'd survived things you couldn't even imagine. The world is full of people like that. They don't tell their stories loudly, so sometimes it's on the rest of us to pay attention. If you've ever made the mistake of judging someone by their job, their size, their scars, or their silence, you're not alone either. We've all done it. What matters is what we do after we find out who they really are. If you'd like to honor people like Sarah, the ones hiding in plain sight, doing their best to live quietly with things that should have broken them, leave a comment. Share their story, or your own. And if you want more stories like this, you know what to do. Your likes, comments, and support help keep these stories alive. Some heroes don't wear uniforms anymore. Some of them wear aprons, name tags, and long sleeves. But that doesn't make them any less dangerous or any less extraordinary.